Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of More to Church, the podcast that explores what it means to be a part of the body of Christ. Today I want to look into what the Bible talks about when it uses the word church. So the word that we translate church, as I mentioned in the last episode, is actually a borrowed word from the German language that means house of the Lord. And the word that is most often translated as church in the New Testament is the Greek word ekklesia. Now, I'm not a Greek scholar. I'm not here to try to expound on the deeper meanings of the Greek language or anything like that. But the word ekklesia simply means the called out ones. And we see this often used outside of the biblical text in secular Greek culture in reference to a political assembly of citizens that took place in ancient Greek, and like the infamous Athenian assembly, which was called together. They were called out to perform certain duties in the Greek civilization, and so it's referring to the called out ones that were gathering together for civic duty. And to kind of expound a little bit on that, I was a part of many nonprofit boards over the years, and part of that responsibility was to be a representative of that board wherever I went. Now, it wasn't just when we were gathered together that I was a board member. I was a representative of that board the whole time. Even when we would just get together maybe once a month, some of the boards I was on only gathered together once a year, but I was still a board member throughout that year. I was still a representative of that board. I still even made decisions for that board. And I was a community ambassador for that board to represent that board to the community around me. And like I said, some of those boards only met once a year. But that didn't detract from the fact that I was a part of that board all throughout the year. And it's kind of similar when we look at the word church, when we think of this idea of ekklesia. It's not like the people in the early church in the New Testament were only part of that ekklesia, were only part of those called out ones when they were assembled together on a particular day or for a particular assembly. Just because they weren't actually meeting at a public service didn't make them any less a member of that body. And that's not too dissimilar to when I was on those nonprofit boards. I served several years on the Child Abuse Prevention Council, and though we only met once a month, I was constantly functioning as a member of that board. And we plan events, we would interact with our community members, we'd even support our local families and businesses within that scope of the mission of the board. In other words, I was a part of that board. I was a part of that ekklesia, so to speak, not only when we were actually gathered together, but all the time. I was always a part of it. I was always representing it, and I was always promoting its agenda in our community. And the word ekklesia, now it appears like 115 times in the New Testament. It's often translated with that word church. That means the house of the Lord. Now, we're taking two terms here. We're taking the term that means the called out ones, and we're shoving it together with a word that means the house of the Lord. Now, those seem almost diametrically opposed to one another. One of them is a place, and one of them is a group of people. And so it goes without saying that we often get this word confused in our English language. Now, this word ekklesia, appears in all but 6 of the New Testament epistles, and all but 3 of the Gospels. Mark, Luke, and John don't have the word ekklesia in it. Now, its appearance in the Gospel of Matthew, this is when Jesus uses it to declare to one of his followers. He says, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my ekklesia." The context here is when Jesus was talking to his followers about who people were saying that Jesus was. And the disciples said that some people thought he was John the Baptist. Others say he was Elijah. Others say he was maybe Jeremiah or one of the other prophets. And Jesus rephrased the question, and he poses it this way. He said, "But who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am?" And that's when Peter gave his iconic response, "You are the Messiah. You are the Christ. You are the anointed one." Some translations say, "the Son of the living God." And of course, Jesus's reply to him is, "You are Peter," which means rock, which the name Peter means rock in the Greek language. You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. On this foundational confession of who I actually am as the Messiah, the Christ, the anointed one, the Son of the living God. That is what I'm going to use as a foundation. I'm going to build my ekklesia on that rock. I'm going to build my gathering of people who believe in this foundational truth. And I can't help but think that what we call the church today isn't what Jesus had in mind when he said those words to Peter. I don't think that he was picturing celebrity pastors with concert level worship productions week after week. I don't think that he was picturing a 501c3 organization that operated much more like a business model with this top-down hierarchical structure of leadership. I don't think he was envisioning a weekly public meeting even with an entirely passive audience sitting and listening to a few people perform songs, perform prayers, perform polished speeches. Now, let me stop here for just a second and remind you that I am not opposed to weekly meetings of Christians gathering together to sing, gathering together to listen to sermons, gathering together to pray together. What I am opposed to is saying that this is church, that our attendance at these weekly meetings is fulfilling our weekly service to God and therefore making us a part of the body of Christ. You can go into any building you want on a Sunday morning. That does not make you automatically a part of the body of Christ. And we look into Paul's reference about the body working together. That's a definition that we can work with because it is a body. It is a gathering of people that works together to form this ekklesia, to form this gathering. Now, if I go back to this idea of me working as a board member on some of these nonprofits, and for instance, let me take into consideration working with a youth camp. I was on several youth camp boards over the years, and if my ideas, if my thoughts and my decisions were completely opposed to the mission of this camp, then I probably wouldn't actually be a functioning member of that board. They'd probably get rid of me for one thing. Another part of it is if I wasn't participating, if I wouldn't show up to the meetings, if I didn't give my input, if I didn't share with them my talents. There was a reason why people chose me to be a part of that board, because I had special talents and skills and abilities that would be beneficial and useful for the decisions that had to be made on that board. And if I just completely stopped using those for whatever reason, if I just didn't participate, if I didn't share my insights, if I didn't do anything, I really wouldn't be a functioning member of that board. I'd just be present. I'd just be there. I'd just be showing up. I wouldn't actually be contributing anything to that board. And therefore, I wouldn't necessarily be a functioning member of that board. Now, again, like I said, I'm not opposed to churches gathering together weekly. Fellowship is absolutely part and parcel to being a part of the church. Now, there has to be more to it, though, than just a weekly gathering, than a weekly public meeting. The word ekklesia is most often used in the New Testament in the book of Acts and 1st and 2nd Corinthians. Now, those books really depict what it looks like to be a functioning member of the church. In Acts, it talks about how they gathered together steadfastly for the breaking of bread, for the apostles to function steadfastly within the apostles' doctrine, within their teachings, the teachings of the apostles, and for the breaking of bread, sharing meals together, and with prayer, they steadfastly participated in those things. And it says they went from house to house as often as they had the opportunity. They went to each other's houses, became involved in each other's lives. And see, when we talk about the church as just a weekly meeting, a once a week, once and done Sunday go to meeting Christian church, then we miss so much of what it actually means to participate in the body of Christ. In Corinthians, when Paul is talking about the the order of the assembly, how things should function when he talks about some of you bringing something that has to do with one of their gifts, some of you bringing a word from the Lord, some of you bringing a song, of you bringing an interpretation of what the word of the Lord is saying to them. Some of you, it talks about all these different things that we can contribute to this gathering. He says, but the reason for all this has to always be for the lifting up, for the building up, for the edification of one another. And that's mutual edification. That's you edifying me edifying this other person, and this other person edifying. And it's just this mutual gathering of people lifting each other up. And that's what it means to be a part of this ekklesia, this gathering. It isn't just that we gathered together on a Sunday or at a particular place that made us the church. No, it's when Jesus said, here's this group of people who's gathering together. Why? With a specific purpose. We understand that's part of the definition of ekklesia, the called out ones. Where are they called out from? Well, in the case of the Athenian council, they were called out from society to participate in a specific activity to make decisions for this council. In the case of Jesus, he's saying, I'm calling you out from the people who don't look to this foundational classification of who I truly am, that I am the Christ, that I am the Messiah, that I am the Son of the living God. And he says that foundational truth, that's what I'm calling you into, this gathering of people who uses that as their foundation. And the verse goes on to say, and the gates of hell will not stand against it. And he also says that he's going to give Peter the keys to the kingdom of heaven. And we're going to get into that a little more in another video, but looking at that helps us recognize that not only are we called out to be of service to this Christ, who is the Messiah, the Son of the living God, but then he introduces this idea of the kingdom of heaven. And the kingdom of heaven has to indicate to us that there is a king. And guess what? That king wasn't Caesar. That king isn't now today the president. That king isn't the prime minister of a country. That king is still Jesus. He's still the Son of the living God, and he is still the sovereign one above all other rulers. And our commitment and our service is to him. Our commitment and our service is to King Jesus. He is the Christ. He is the Son of the living God. He is the ruler. He is the one that we're doing all this for. And this foundation of that confession is what's going to build up the church. So if you're part of an organization who looks to something other than Jesus as the king, as the ruler, as the one that we are living and serving, then you're not a part of his kingdom. You're not a part of his body. You're not a part of his church. You're not a part of his ekklesia. And so we're going to explore that a little more in the future as we continue on. But I just wanted to encourage you today, especially just understanding and recognizing that being a part of this body has to start with that foundation of recognizing that Jesus is the Christ. He is the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And he is the one that we're looking to and that we're serving. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your week.